Hi, everybody, and welcome to Tuvix Watch, where we do nothing but talk about Tuvix for time. No, I'm kidding. I'm sorry. It's an in-joke. This is Blizzard Watch. I'm Matt. I'm not Tuvix, and neither are Liz or Joe. They're also not Tuvix. Nobody is Tuvix. So, guys, fair amount of stuff happening. Not just World of Warcraft, but a bunch of other stuff, too. Before we do that, though, Liz, we keep forgetting to do this until later, so I'm going to get you to do the Patreon stuff if you can.
Okay, yes. So Blizzard Watch is, of course, made possible thanks to listeners like you supporting us on Patreon. And everyone who supports us lets us do more podcasts and more posts. We are trying to do more, particularly right now when The War Within has just come out. We are working on doing more podcasts. We're going to do a series of Dragon Age Lore Watch episodes. We're recording the first one this weekend, hopefully, if we can get all that settled out. And we're doing some extra tabletop podcast. And even if you aren't into those things, we're trying to do a bunch of guides for The War Within and just get more coverage out there. If you can support us, we greatly appreciate it. It really helps us out, and it's what lets us keep doing these things. We are shooting for a goal of trying to keep us up to $4,500 on Patreon. That lets us continue doing this kind of expanded coverage and really kind of trying to knock it out of the park and get all of the guides people want, to do more podcasts that maybe y'all will enjoy. And if you want to hear something from us on a podcast, send us a message on Patreon, send us a message in Discord. Doesn't matter if you're a supporter, send us a message and we'll see if we can do something. So if you can support us on Patreon, I really appreciate it. Everyone on the site appreciates it. It lets us keep going. And I do want to thank a couple of people who subscribed on Patreon this week. There is James, who joined as a $3 member. That gets you early access to all of the podcasts, including our pre-show rambling, which almost went into Tuvix, but didn't.
We pulled it out at the last moment.
We don't talk about Tuvix. And CP, who upgraded his membership to $25. Thank you so much. This is what keeps us all going. So if you can support us, please do. If you can't, then I'm glad you're here listening to us anyway. Please keep listening. Recommend the podcast to others, to friends, and read the site. All of that helps. Thank you all for your support.
Thank you, Liz. Also, I want to mention real fast, if you are listening to the podcast, you can do stuff like give us a vote on Spotify or YouTube or anywhere else you're getting the podcast. You can, basically say, we like this podcast, and that'll help too. Every little bit helps. So, just keep that in mind. Alrighty. I'm going to just start off with some World of Warcraft stuff. Right now, as we're recording this, it's September 17th. So Nerub-ar Palace Mythic just opened, Raid Finder Wing 2, and Story Mode and Mythic Plus Dungeons. We covered the Mythic Plus Dungeons last week in terms of which ones are in the rotation and so forth. But we didn't talk much about Story Mode. I wanted to briefly, before we talk about the World First Race, which of course we're going to talk about, I wanted to say, either of you tried Story Mode yet? What do you think of it? Or even just conceptually? Joe?
I have not tried it yet.
You guys both are going to be raiding in Nerub-ar, though, so you probably don't really need to.
Mm-hmm.
Go ahead.
I was going to say, I think that it is a good option for folks that don't want to sit in the LFR queue and want to experience what other people get to. We talked about this a while ago, where gating key story elements behind raids can sometimes feel bad. And they've done things to let you experience them after. And they've done stuff like, click the statue and see the cinematic, or go here and do this thing and you get to see the cinematic, or complete this quest and you get to see the cinematic. And that's fine and dandy, but I don't know how else to say it. It hits different when you're just watching it on high definition versus when you're doing the thing and then get that as the reward, even if it's just story mode. So I'm okay with this. Yeah. It's an accessibility option that people can just do, and I'm here for it.
Hey, Liz, do you have anything else to add before we move on?
Exactly that. I'm glad people have the option, and The War Within has actually been the most accessible raiding experience we've ever had, because not only are we getting story mode this week, which lets you go in and see that final fight and see the cinematic right there, it also has LFR Wing 2. And this is the fastest we've ever seen LFR roll out. LFR Wing 1 came with the initial release of the raid with normal and heroic. LFR Wing 2 is this week. LFR Wing 3 is next week. It is super great.
I have to agree that the fastness of Raid Finder this week is pretty cool.
I want to cut in with
Okay.
I want to cut in with one tiny thing, is that as we are recording this, I just got an email. We have a new Patreon supporter, Andrew, who joined us at a $1 member, which even that helps because all of these small memberships add up and help keep us going. So thank you.
All right. Thank you. Anyway, we're going to start talking about the Mythic Raid World First race. First up, the servers were down for an extended period of time today, but from what I understand, they is back up, and that's good.
Yep.
So the Mythic, the World First race right now, people are watching it in various places. We have a link here to places we said to watch it. Quite frankly, it's our article. Have you been watching it, guys? Like either of you?
I've watched a little bit this afternoon. Kind of the first few days of the World First race is a little slow because
Are they doing the splits again?
Yeah, they're always doing splits. They keep running heroic splits. We usually get a few kills by guilds that are doing a day rating for the first few days of the World's First race, and then they fall off because not everyone can do full-time rating like Echo, like Liquid, like Method, and those bigger guilds. So we've gotten a few early kills by I gotta look this up, by Melee Mechanics and the Early Shift, I believe, have all gotten in here and gotten some early kills. But you also have Liquid has jumped in and grabbed several kills this week.
Although they've stopped doing mythics and have started doing splits now.
Yeah, they were doing splits this afternoon. They did the first few bosses on Mythic, and now it does not surprise me that they've gone back to splits. It's only open in North America as we're recording this tomorrow. It's going to heat up a little because it will open in Europe, so we'll get Echo and Method jumping in. But
Where's
really,
Dungeon
it's going to
Dojo
take a few
from?
more days. Dungeon Dojo is actually like a consortium of smaller guilds. I would definitely watch Dungeon Dojo because they're like, these are our happy little underdogs. Because tons of guilds do this, but we usually only talk about the top 3 or 4. So, but lots of guilds are out there competing, playing the game, having fun. So it's great to have Dungeon Dojo highlighting all of these other guilds that are out there. But it's, for the past few races, it's been really between Liquid and Echo, with the Method trying to get in there and get another World First. But we'll see how the teams do this year.
Yeah, since they're doing splits right now, it's hard to judge who's actually, going to start pushing.
And
There's the first few mythic bosses are never really that hotly contested. It's always once you get to the first lip in difficulty that you start seeing the actual contest go on. I should have.
and also, I mean, the first boss went down in a single pull. So these early bosses are usually, they come and go really fast. So it sort of zooms in the beginning, and then it'll get a boss that's challenging enough that everyone will get stuck on it.
Mm-hmm.
And those, I think that becomes interesting to watch because you can watch it long enough to see strategies involved, to have a real kind of competition over who's going to finish this boss first. So you're usually kind of waiting a couple days for that while everyone works on gearing up, runs splits, runs Mythic Plus. Maybe people are running delves, or people out there running tier 8 delves for gear. I haven't seen anyone doing it on these World First teams, but it's possible.
They won't.
It's possible.
Because it only gets you 603. So like
it's not going to complete any sets either.
No, a delve doesn't get a high enough gear for them to really care about. 603 being the highest. Yeah, they could upgrade it, but Mythic Pluses are going to be more gear worthy because they can push those keys as high as they can and get guaranteed like high loot tier. I forgot what the splits are for or breakpoints are for the eye level, but yeah, delves do not play into that. I don't think they ever will.
Yeah, it's not likely. I mean, if you're bored and by yourself, I can see doing it, but it's not gonna do what doing Mythic Split, like doing heroic splits or Mythic Plus will do. Especially if you can get Mythic Plus up to like the plus 10 key, which is like the top right now, right?
Yes, I believe that's correct.
You can get. I think you can get like what's the top gear? I forget how much it goes up per level. But I think it's like
I don't remember.
Yeah, but it's significantly higher. It's almost like 20 levels higher. So yeah, I'm interested to see how it all shakes out because this is the first world first race of this expansion, and if they're continuing splits, it feels like okay, that was definitely the thing to do back in the previous expansion. So are Mythics just going to continue on like that? Is it basically just going to be what we've seen before? I am curious. I don't know. Also, it depends on what happens in the future. Like if the way that the fights are designed doesn't reward that kind of thing, then it will stop. But yeah, right now we're kind of just waiting for these guys to get serious. Right now they're warming up, and we're just waiting for them to decide. Okay, now we're going to really push on this. And they want to get everybody geared. That's the nature of the beast is that the better your gear is, the easier these fights are. That's just a fact. And it's only been like 2 weeks of this raid being open. So yeah, it's still a lot of heroic gear is still going to be the best you can get before you get any mythic gear. That's just the way it is.
Absolutely.
So, but we should probably
and if you get the right.
Well, go ahead.
If you get the right pieces or you get those tier set bonuses, then that means a lot. Even if you're not getting the highest eye level, if you get a tier set bonus, that can be a huge upgrade. So usually you see them pushing through these for tier pieces to get as many people in tier as possible, or farming for specific trinkets are just those powerful items that will make a difference even if they may not be the top eye level.
Yeah, there's certain trinkets that have amazing on uses or what have you. We should also mention quickly, Liz already mentioned this, but we should just briefly say it again. Next week, the 24th, that's when Raid Finder Wing 3 opens, and that will be the completion of Raid Finder, this expansion, at least for this raid. We will see more Raid Finder as more raids come out. Meanwhile, today, September 17th, Cataclysm Classic Phase 3 is out. It was originally said to be in October, but no, it's now. You can be doing that right now if you want to, which is pretty cool. Cataclysm Classic has been coming out pretty fast.
Yeah, and I have been wondering, what does this mean about, our next Classic expansion? Because they've really been tearing through phases on Cataclysm. This was a lot faster than we expected.
This is Firelands, so with Firelands, that's basically the penultimate expansion. Right after this is Dragon Soul. So we don't know when they're going to put Dragon Soul out. They might do a phase before Dragon Soul even to do something else. So yeah, but still, it's kind of nuts that they've basically gotten to Firelands so quick after it launched. Because this came out this year. And it's already like more than halfway done. I mean, do you guys remember Firelands very well? Go ahead and say what you're going to say first.
Oh, I was going to say that Cataclysm Classic only has 4 announced phases, and the next phase is, as you said, Dragon Soul, and that's it. That's the only thing we have listed for Cataclysm. So that would imply a Pandaria Classic pretty soon. I mean, that certainly suggests it.
Yeah, and I mean, it's interesting that is being implied because we just got done with Hyjal, I want to say WoW Remix, because that's what it was named, but then you guys often call it like, Panda Remix or whatever.
Remists.
Remists, yes, that's the one. And, that is something to be considered. If we're going to be going into Mists of Pandaria that fast, are we going to start doing these like every year? Like, are we going to have a new one every year? That's interesting if true. I don't know if that's where they're going, but
I mean, we were predicting Phase 4 to be in January, except this has come out several weeks earlier. We're going earlier than we expected. So are we getting Cataclysm Classic Phase 4 in like December?
That doesn't seem likely, yeah.
Yeah, I don't know, but it does seem like this has been like a year-long release cycle for Cataclysm Classic. So are we just zooming on to Mists of Pandaria? Maybe. We may see Mists of Pandaria. Yeah. It could be early next year.
Yeah. Who knows? We don't really know. If they put out the last Cataclysm phase, before December or even during December, that's only a few months in Firelands. That's like September, October, November, and then boom, we do a new thing. That's pretty fast for Cataclysm Firelands. If they don't do that and put Dragon Soul out in January, it's still not likely to last for 6 months. So yeah, it's hard to tell. It's really hard to tell. We could theoretically, even in the longest possible prediction, we could have Mists of Pandaria Classic in summer of next year, which would make this about a year long.
I mean, Cataclysm Classic launched this May, so
yeah,
we really haven't been here for too long, which I'm not Cataclysm's biggest fan. I'm fine with that, but they're definitely pushing this one a lot faster. I personally wonder, are we going to see more things like Season of Discovery? Are we going to see Cataclysm Classic Season of Discovery kind of things? I would love to see more things like Season of Discovery, and at some point, Blizzard's going to run out of expansions to classicify, so maybe we're going to get more weird alternate takes on expansions like that.
However, it's interesting because since we're talking about Mists of Pandaria Classic, that would then say you'd have Warlords of Draenor Classic, Legion Classic, Battle for Azeroth Classic, Shadowlands Classic, Dragonflight Classic, and then finally the War Within Classic. And then by the time that all happens, we'll probably be into at least midnight, if not the last Titan. So they are making more expansions, so they could keep going for a while, even if they're releasing at very high speed. They have a backlog built up that they could take a few years to get through, and by the time they get through them all, they could be on enough expansions that they could go for another couple of years. I don't know if they're even thinking about the problem, like if the bottleneck of future expansions versus how do we slow this train down. I don't know.
They have to be thinking about it because Classic has been really popular.
Yeah.
I mean, it's not for everyone, but some players like Classic better than they like the modern game, and that's cool. It's cool that everyone has an option of something they enjoy playing. But yeah, eventually they will run out of things to classicify.
Yeah, by definition, as long as the classic expansions come out faster than the new expansions, yeah, there's a deadline. If they could space it so they come out at exactly the same amount of time, maybe. I don't know.
Except they're clearly not doing that with this accelerated Cataclysm release schedule.
Clearly they are not. For that matter, I mean, they might in fact put this out. They might finally put out the final phase and then immediately announce something like Season of Discovery. Or Cataclysm, cool. Cataclysm, accelerated, or maybe even like new Cataclysm where they suddenly you go to a different place and there's more stuff. I don't know. There's a lot to consider about all this. They could put in a cataclysmized vision of the underground zone that we saw in Dragonflight with Neltharion's secret lab.
Yeah.
We could end up doing that Cataclysm version of that for all I know. There's a lot of potential possibilities. But probably right now we should talk about delves. Have you guys been doing delves? I actually did quite a few of them.
I've done some, and yes. I mean, I think the whole problem with delves is that some of them are more challenging than you expect, and the difficulty levels.
Some classes are having a harder time than others.
Yeah, and the difficulty level just feels wonky. The scaling feels a little weird.
Well, Joe, have you delved at all?
Yeah, I've done a bunch of them. As a matter of fact, that's where I got my upgrades from this loot box today.
Right. How do you feel? Did you do them as healing, or did you do them as a damage spec? There's no way in hell I was doing them as healing. And that's because let's talk about this. Why wouldn't you do them as healing?
Because Bran is an idiot.
Fair.
The AI with so I need to preface this, and they're aware of a number of problems with Bran's AI that they are currently working on. Case in point, last night I don't know if they fixed it today during the maintenance yet, because I haven't checked. But if you were to, let's say, I don't know, randomly go into a +8 delve, Bran could just randomly decide that you were an enemy and start shooting you. Which is a problem when you're in the middle of combat. He's much better as a healer/tank than he is a DPS/tank. For those in chat, yes, Vertigree, and others, Bran could possibly kill you. It is a thing that was happening yesterday. Again, I haven't heard about today. They did fix a bunch of stuff, so we'll see. Delves are fun. They're fine. They're bite-sized dungeon content, essentially. You can go through in as quick as 15 minutes. You can do it with a group. You can do it solo. Group feels really good. Solo is questionable based off the level, your eye level, and what your class are. For case in point, me and 6K were on our shaman, and we feel relatively squishy. And it feels bad when you're doing a bountiful dungeon or a bountiful delve, because those have gear at the end of them that you spend your coffer keys on that you get as you're doing world questing and whatnot. And he was able to do an 8 by himself, but barely succeeded without dying to the boss at the end. I can't even try to. Like, I'm not geared for elemental to do it. I don't have gear for enhancement to do it. And going in as healer with Braun as the only DPS / tank, he doesn't pick up aggro. So, like, things are just going to run by him and just start wailing on me anyway. So but then I go on to my hunter, my under-geared hunter compared to my main shaman, and I just destroy delves. Because I'm literally coming in there with a pet that has damage reduction, that can hold aggro, that has AoE aggro, and then I just have a kit that's designed to mow down a whole bunch of different things. So it's not all delve experiences are created equal, is the best way that I can put it. There's still a ton of fun, and they're working on balancing it. So I want to make sure that's perfectly clear. I absolutely love them. They're cool as heck. I'm looking forward to some rebalancing.
See, the thing is, I did them on Warrior, specifically a Fury Warrior. And I think for Warriors, your heroic talents are really important for delve success. Like, I think as Mountain King, I was having a great time as Mountain King. Mountain Kings have a lot of ways to mitigate damage. They're very Thunderclap reliant, which slows, which does a debuff things when it hits them. There's a specific talent that means you take less damage after you use one of your lightning abilities specifically, and it can be the hammer one, it can be Thunderclap, it can be Shockwave, and certain talents now work on their damage as well, like reverberating, the reverberation one that usually gets done for Whirlwind. You can now use that as well as a Mountain King, and it will affect like Shockwave and Thunderclap. So there's a lot of stuff that makes certain hero talents very useful for it. And at least on a Warrior, I only used him as healing ever. Like, I never told him to be DPS. I was handling the DPS.
Yeah,
his healing has definitely been nerfed, and nerfed hard.
Yeah, I guess, but I think it depends on your class, because like when he was healing as my shaman, it never felt like enough even before he was nerfed.
Yeah, but for me, he healed enough before, and now, keep in mind, we're trying to do tier 8 now, whereas I wasn't before. But before, I felt like I was just demolishing delves, and then they made the changes to his healing, and I'm trying, level 8, and it's like, yikes, this is not going well. So there is a certain amount of, I think, again, though, you're right that it is class specific. Anyway, go ahead, Liz.
They have buffed them, and they have nerfed them, and they have buffed them. I mean, both the scaling in delves and Bran himself, they've gone back and forth. And I just think it feels like delves needed a little more dev time, a few more iterations before they, came out. And I'm, again, like Joe was saying, I'm not saying that they're bad. I think they're really interesting and really fun, but they scale oddly. They have some weird kind of breakpoints. They act weirdly when you add more people to your group. Like, for a while there, having 2 players in a group meant everything had less health and did less damage. And if you had 1 player in a group, that was how it was scaling. So you had these kind of very awkward difficulty tiers. For my part, I'm not as far up. I'm not doing tier 8 delves. I have gone up to tier 5, and I tried this tier 5 delve, and it was fine. It was fine. And then I got to the boss, and the boss beat the crap out of me. I was not even close to killing the boss. It had 30 million health, and each of its attacks was dealing 200,000 damage to 400,000 damage. And I've got 4 million health. I can only survive so much of that, and I can only interrupt so many of those things. So I was just getting... So, like I said, the scaling feels weird and uneven. So I haven't made a ton of progress there. I think they're fun. I'm going to keep doing them. But, like, with my experience trying tier 5, I'm like, I don't know that I can progress in these because I'm like 20 eye levels over what's recommended for tier 5.
But I think the thing is, like, you can do them in a group too, right? And that's sort of like the benefit of it. So, like, you don't have to do tier 5 by yourself. As a matter of fact, like, an example of our guild, like, I was stuck at tier 6 or tier 7, something like that. And that's as high as I could go by myself, but we were able to like get a group together and then blast through a 7 to get me up to 8, and then go through a bunch of 8s on Bountiful so that we could get gear and then get rewards for the reward box at the end of I'm not calling it a disappointment box this season yet, because it literally did the exact opposite that it's done for the last 2 expansions and gave me way too many choices. So thank you, Blizzard. I'll take this as a sign of saying like you're sorry.
Well, I mean, I have to jump in here and mention the memes that are getting made about how delves love to drop capes. Like delves love to give you capes. Apparently, this is not something I've personally experienced, but a lot of people are complaining that delves seem cape heavy or drape heavy, if you want alliteration there. I
have not seen that, but for those of you at home asking who delves are for, if it's for solo players, if it's for groups, if it's for non-raiders, the short answer is yes. It's for all of these things. Like, there are people who are really into pushing delves as high as they can, if that's their thing. It's for people that only have 15-20 minutes to run something and don't necessarily want to run a full dungeon or have to deal with people or deal with the AI dungeons. And it's for people that want to do group content that is maybe not exactly high stakes, right? Like, it's a little bit of something for everybody. It's honestly the type of content that I love in this game, because there are so many different ways to approach it. And the thing is, you don't have to push delves all the way up to the highest that you can possibly do it, especially because after you get to, I think it's rank 8, you don't get anything additional. It's just bragging rights after that. So, and by the time people are getting gear anyway, eventually you're going to be able to do a level 8 without an issue if that's something you want to do. But it's not required. So it's fun optional content that you can do alone or do it with friends, and that makes it really cool.
Yeah, there definitely are some weird things going on with delves. I freely feel like, Braun. Part of it is, do you have all the stuff Braun needs to do the things you're trying to do with it? There's certain items you can use on Braun that help a lot. And scaling stuff does get weird. Like Liz mentioned, the thing about 2 people would actually get a weaker delve than 1 person by themselves. There definitely feels like going between tier 6 to tier 7 or tier 5 to tier 6 can be a sudden, just surprising, even shocking level of damage increase. Like, not just the amount of damage you're taking, but the amount of damage you have to do goes way up. Like you were talking about, like, was it 300 million you said? Like some ridiculous amount of health. It just seems to come out of nowhere. Like, I was killing this guy just fine, 1 tier. And it's like, should it suddenly be 3 times harder?
Yeah, that tier 5 boss had 30 million health. And I'm like, I just couldn't outdamage it before it could outdamage me, because it was hitting me for 400k, 200k with each attack, melee attacks and spells. And I couldn't dodge them enough.
And some delve bosses
to survive.
Yeah, some delve bosses also have so many different AoE things that you have to get out of. Like, it gets kind of like, oh my lord, I've done raids with less mechanics than this. It's like, now you have to get out of that. Now you have to go to the side. And it's like, Braun yelling at me to get out of things is helpful. Quite frankly, I kind of like that he does that. But at the same time, it's like, Braun, I know I have to get out of that. I've been getting out of it this whole time. Now I'm angry at you. So yeah, there's a lot to delves. And I do think that they need more iteration before they feel as good as they should. But I do like them. If nothing else, I love being able to just go to one, not having to do anything else. You can just go there, go in, fight, leave, whatever.
One thing I definitely like about The War Within is that there is a new thing in the Great Vault where you can unlock gear by doing world content and doing delves. So the Great Vault had kind of been a non-thing for players who mostly solo, for players who didn't raid, players who didn't push Mythic Plus. It was like, this is just a non-event. You're never going to interact with it. But now there's a tier of the Great Vault that will unlock because you're doing world content or doing delves. And I think that is great. I got a lot of gear options from delves this week in today's Great Vault. And it gives you more options to gear up, to get good gear, and to get a level of gear that you used to not be able to get in any kind of solo content.
Cool. I agree. However, at this point, we are going to move on a little bit because I was going to jump ahead of the stuff I wanted to talk about because I do think we should mention this really fast. Overwatch 2 has its Overwatch/Warcraft anniversary collab. It's released today.
Mm-hmm.
And so you can get skins for Widowmaker to be Sylvanas, Reinhardt gets to be the Lich King, Torbjorn gets to be Magni, but the diamond version of Magni. And in a decision that I really wasn't understanding, I can't remember the name of the Omnic who floats. Zenyatta, thank you. Zenyatta is now Thrall. Zenyatta gets and he's specifically Big Red Beads Thrall.
It's exactly because of the beads. That's the only reason.
Yeah, I figured. But nevertheless, those are the 4 that you can pick up in Overwatch for the anniversary for World of Warcraft. Meanwhile, Overwatch 2 is having its first anniversary. Or is this their second year?
I think this is their second year.
Okay. Well, they're doing their anniversary event as well, right around the same time, or at least, fairly soon. And that's got a whole bunch of new skins and stuff as well. But I really wanted to mention the World of Warcraft one, just for the idea of Widowmaker being Sylvanas, because she's using a bow. And I'm like, you didn't make Hanzo Sylvanas? I mean, come on, guys. This was right there. Hanzo and Sylvanas,
Hanzo could have rocked that look. Hanzo could have rocked that.
I see no reason why it didn't happen. And then you could have had I forget who the cowboy, because they changed his name and I can never remember the new name. Cole Cassidy, that's his name now, right?
Cassidy, that's all I know.
Right. He could have gotten a Nathanos Blightcaller outfit and he could have just followed Hanzo around. And that would have been great. And if you know, you know. And if you don't know, well, don't look this up. But regardless, I'm excited and yet also a little sad that they didn't take that step. They've got a guy who uses a bow, and they decided to give that skin with a bow to Widowmaker, who doesn't even use a bow. So
I mean, there's already a Tehran skin in the game for, why can't I remember her name now?
I don't know.
Oh my goodness, it's gonna kill me.
Do you want to think about that?
Not literally. I think it's like Symmetra or but yeah, they've been doing. Yeah, thank you. I was Symmetra. Thank you. Yeah, Symmetra has the Tehran skin, and there's WoW skins have been a thing for a little bit, and I'm glad to see them carrying over. I always think it's neat, and the more expansive it gets, the better.
But yeah, those are the Overwatch things. Now to move on for something I think is amazing. The Diablo 3 PTR went live today, and it's going until next week, continuing the Diablo tendency of having 1 week PTRs.
Which it seems way too short. I mean, in Diablo 3, you could get away with it because it's kind of in maintenance mode. It's doing these rerun seasons. But Diablo 4 does the same thing. It does these 1 week PTRs, and it feels like, you could have tested this a little harder.
However, the Diablo 3 one is the Shades of Nephilim season theme, which is a repeat of the previous one they did with the Nephilim theme. I'm interested to see what happens. I am... if they can keep Diablo 3 going with new PTRs and keep people playing it while it's in this essential maintenance mode, I mean, that will be at the point where we have 3 Diablo games running simultaneously. No, 4. 4. Because we have Diablo 2 Reloaded or Resurrected. Diablo 3, Diablo 4, and Diablo Immortal. The only thing left to do is to find a way to get people to play the original Diablo all the time. And then we'll just have all this Diablo being played constantly in a loop. Nobody will know what Diablo game you're talking about when you're playing it. I'm excited.
It feels a little weird, honestly. I'm not going to lie. Having that many Diablos active at the same time.
When there's a long period of time where no Diablos are active, or at least Diablo 2 was the only one.
It is interesting because just based on traffic to the site about the various games, I would say Diablo 3 is maybe still the most popular one. We get a lot of traffic on Diablo 3 posts, even though we don't do a lot of them. Whereas our Diablo 4 posts are, there's always some excitement at the beginning of the season, but they trickle off pretty fast. So I think Diablo 3 is still extremely popular.
Well, I mean, it's my favorite Diablo.
It's a great game. It's a great game.
But regardless, now talking about Diablo 4, they did 2 things. They had a story so far video that they put out for Diablo 4 for people who, I guess, didn't play it and then are going to play Vessel of Hatred, or just forgot it because, some of us got through this content a year ago. If you've been doing nothing but seasons, you could theoretically have skipped it every single time after. So it's quite possible you may never have actually played through the story of Diablo 4. So they want to have an explainer for people who go into Diablo 4 or Vessel of Hadron and are like, why is any of this happening? There's a video. But go ahead.
Does it matter why any of this is happening? You are here to punch demons in the face, and there are demons here. It's like, sometimes that's enough explanation. I do think Diablo 4 has a better plot, a better story than any of the other games have had. But also, it's like, it's Diablo. You're here to punch demons, and it's to bring in the demons.
Yeah, my thing on it wasn't even that, although that certainly is something you could argue. My thing on it is just, I don't feel like the video does justice to the story in any reasonable way. Like, I watched it, and I'm like, this nobody watching this actually understands why this was a good game. So that's me. But regardless, the more interesting thing was that they had a dev chat on Vessel of Hatred, and the basic backstory, like what the characters were thinking, like why Nerub would go to Nahantu in the first place. I thought one was pretty interesting. And more importantly, it shows that they're ramping up, because we've got like less than a month now.
Mm-hmm.
At this point, we've got like 2 weeks to October, and then a week in October. And then we're going to basically be at the expansion, or we'll be like me, wistfully staring at the expansion, trying to make money appear magically. But regardless, not that long till it comes out. And we're going to get the whole new systems patch. A lot of stuff is going to change. The levels are going to change. Like you will only get up to like level 50. And then the way Paragon works is going to be a lot more like Diablo 3 than it was Diablo 4 so far. There's going to be a bunch of other stuff happening. So I'm interested to see how players feel about it when it gets to that point. Regardless, that's all coming. And we're going to get that Shades of the Nephilim season from Diablo 3, which makes me super excited. I don't think we have any particular news about what Diablo 2's next season is going to be. Like, I don't think we've had anything
yet.
Yeah.
No. I mean, it's going to happen at some point in the future, but nothing announced. Diablo 2 hasn't been announcing things. There's not a lot of lead time between an announcement and something happening.
Yeah, they just literally say, hey, this is happening, and then boom, it happens.
Yeah, usually like within a week.
Alrighty. Before we go on to these, like I put in 3 things for other games, but I figured both you and Joe might have another game you want to talk about before we move on to the things I put in, so I'm going to throw it to Joe first. Anything in particular you want to discuss?
Nope, we're good.
Okay, Liz?
No, I don't have anything you didn't list.
Okay, then I'm going to say it now. I feel weird talking about Concord. Like, I don't know how to talk about this game. I don't want to sound mean. It's not a game I've played. Straight up, I have not played Concord. I have no feelings about it as a game. As a phenomenon, though, this was like, I cannot believe Sony did this. Like, Sony has been basically winning the console wars for so long that it almost feels like they decided to step on a caltrop just to give Microsoft a chance. Like, wow. Concord
for people who do not know what the situation is, what's going on with Concord, because I've heard parts of this, but I don't know exactly what happened.
Okay. The clearest way I can think about to explain the Concord situation is, for the past 8 years, Sony has been designing a team shooter. If you're thinking other team shooters you might have heard of include Apex Legends or Valorant, or even one we just talked about called Overwatch. Those are the kind of games that Sony decided they wanted to have. They wanted to make one of their own. And so for the past 8 years, they have been working on designing one. Some people have said they've spent up to $150 million on this thing. Others have said more. Others have said less. I am not there. I cannot verify how much money they spent on it. However, the game came out, released for both PlayStation 5 and Windows on August 23 of this year. On September 3rd of this year, Sony announced the game would be shut down on September 6th, which they then did, with all sold copies being refunded. And to put that into perspective, all sold copies was 25,000 copies. For a year that they spent 8 years making, a first-person shooter, hero shooter type game like Overwatch, like Valorant, like Apex Legends, and the concurrent players on Steam the day it launched was something like 700. Like, now compare this to one person actually sat down and broke down how this stacked up compared to other failures. Like Fallout 76 had like something like 3 times that many concurrent players, and obviously is still here. Like, the servers were not shut down within 2 weeks. That game's still out there. So No Man's Sky, terrible launch, still here. People are still playing it, still spending money on it. It's still alive. Cyberpunk 2077, terrible launch. It got pulled from the PlayStation Store. Still here, considered to be one of the best action video, role-playing games of its generation. A lot of people love that game. E.T. killed the Atari, basically killed the Atari 2600, killed the original 80s video game renaissance, sold 1.7 million cartridges. So the game that nearly destroyed video games was on the best-selling list for 2 months and sold over 1 million copies, almost 2 million copies. Concord couldn't get people to play it to the point where barely 2,500 people bought it. And again, I can't sit here and tell you it's a good game or a bad game, but that's not even relevant. In a time period where I think last year or early this year, Helldivers 2 came out and utterly dominated gaming for months. In a world where Pal World came out and was quite successful and had everyone talking about that for a couple months. These games were created by smaller, more independent studios, and the game that Sony spent 8 years and over $100 million making became almost instantly deceased on launch. And it's like, from what I understand about Firewalk Studios, they're not a bad studio, but this was the first time that they had to develop this game solo. It was in development for 8 years. It's like, now there's no chance Firewalk is going to continue to exist. They launched this on May 24th of 2023. This game was one of the things PlayStation put on their showcase. The beta was in July of this year, and on release of the beta, people were like already saying, what is the deal with this? I've even seen one person talking about the art and design of the characters point out that these were some of the best animated characters ever made. Best facial mocap, best mocap in general. Really a triumph in terms of animation. But the art design was so bad that people couldn't engage with it. Actual people who do fanfic and fan art couldn't do fan art of Concord because its stuff was too neutral and bland. Like one of these guys, his costume consists of an orange safety vest. Like it's what it looks like. It looks like he's wearing a kind of orange vest, so in case he falls out of a boat, he will be floating until someone can come save him. That's what his costume looks like. One guy looks like Thanos with red face paint on. I don't understand Concord. It is like how it got to this point, how they spent this much money on it. I think it's a real interesting look at how, in industry, companies that run games as an industry, as opposed to we make games we love, how they can fail, how they can fall down. And we're talking I'm looking at the reviews of this thing before I'll let you Liz talk. Digital Trends gave it a 3 out of 5. Eurogamer gave it a 3 out of 5. Games Radar gave it a 3 out of 5. Hardcore Gamer gave it a 3.5 out of 5. IGN gave it a 7 out of 10. PC Gamer gave it 45 out of 100. PC Mag gave it a 3.5 out of 5. Then we got 710. That's from Push Square, Shack News, and Video Game Chronicles, 3 out of 5. So the reviews are meh.
The thing that surprises me most about this is that they just decided to shut it down and cut their losses. We have, as you have mentioned already, seen a lot of games come out and be terrible, and then they turned it around. They kept working on the game, and in the end, we've gotten some great games, like No Man's Sky, like Cyberpunk 2077.
This wasn't going to be
They didn't
great,
even try.
Yeah, even if this wasn't going to be great, they didn't even Fallout 76 it.
Yeah.
And Fallout 76 was by no means good when it launched, but it's at least passable. I know lots of people who like it. I don't personally play it, but I don't know if Joe has anything to say on this one, or if he's just like, yeah, Concord, nah, it's not my thing.
No, I think we've given it too much airtime, honestly, for a game that is just not worth it.
Okay, the other things I wanted to mention really fast is that Yar's Revenge is getting a reboot. And if you don't remember what Yar's Revenge was, you're like, I don't know what that is. And if you're like me and you do remember what Yar's Revenge is, you're like, we're rebooting Yar's Revenge? But yeah.
Also, you should probably make sure that you hydrate and take your medication because your bones probably hurt right now, because I'm feeling that right this second.
Yeah, it's fair. It's fair. I have a big thing of liquid for every show, and that's because talking for an hour at my age it's a dry experience. So yeah, Yar's Revenge is definitely going to make you feel dry. But no, regardless, the best part about it is it's a reboot with a kind of different, almost Metroidvania style, but the original game is playable from inside of it.
Mm-hmm.
You can actually go find a console and play like a cabinet and play the original Yars' Revenge inside the game, which I think is amazing. Like I'm just right there. It's out now. Like it came out this month. And I'm like, oh my God, how did I miss this?
Yeah, it's called Yars Rising, I believe is the name
Yars
of it.
Rising is the new reboot. Yeah. And it's a reboot of the series. Much in the same way that they tried to reboot Saints Row, except that was not good. And I don't know if this one's good, but regardless. Also, Arcane Season 2 is coming out in November, and they just put out a new trailer talking about it. And first off, Arcane was really good, and I'm really looking forward to Season 2, quite frankly.
But it's also going to be the last season.
What?
So the ads for it, they keep saying that this is the last season of Arcane.
Yeah, I have heard that.
Which makes me sad, because I want more.
I think to a certain degree, though, you can't really... The character things they built, really... It would be hard to go into a third season.
Well, here's my disagreement with that. There's like 300 champions in a whole world with a bunch of lore. Yeah, they could do a whole bunch of stuff if they really wanted to.
But will they do that as Arcane, or they consider Arcane to be very specific to the characters and settings that we saw in the first season? Like, there's very possible they could just go and do lots more stuff. Just don't call it Arcane. I don't know.
True.
I think that since the first season was very much about Jinx and Vi and Caitlyn and the city, the city and the Undercity. Yeah, Piltover and whatever they call the Undercity. Because it was built around that, and made it so much better than it ever was before, they kind of seem to be on the impression that they want to just end that story. And that's fair. But I do agree with you that, yeah, there's a lot more. I mean, no one ever talks about The Ruined King, but it was one of the best video games of that year. And if you like Japanese role-playing games, it was amazing. And it had all this story for these characters. Yasuo became a person, and he's played by Liam O'Brien. So he's a person, he's cool.
They released a fighting game that you played in the launcher while you were waiting for your queues to pop. That earned you skins for the characters that you could fight as. Like they did some wild stuff, but yeah, this is definitely newsworthy to note that the Arcane Season 2 is coming and that this will be the last one for Arcane. And maybe you're right, and I hope you are, because there's so many other places I'd like to go.
I think at this point, after this has been this successful, Netflix would have to be maniacs to not want to do anything else with this IP. And for that matter, maybe Riot wants to shop the IP around. You know, they could always just go over to Amazon and say, hey, that Fallout series wasn't bad. How would you like to do one about Ms. Fortune?
Because, I mean, we have so many other places to go. We still have to go to Bandle City, Bilgewater, Demacia, Ionia, Noxus, like Shadow Isles. There's so many places we could visit. I love League of Legends. I'm just saying.
But also, one of the things I want to mention here is how to this day, I'm still disappointed that the Diablo show we were told we were going to get never happened.
Yeah.
And the Overwatch show that everyone thought should have happened didn't happen. And it's like, guys, seriously, what are you doing? You got to start looking around here, man. Look at the Fallout game. Look at Fallout's got a show that's like one of the most popular shows. Halo has a terrible show, but it's there. You guys really could have done something amazing here. But at this point, I guess we're going to move on and try to get at least one of these podcast questions in. Woohoo!
It would be good. I think our listeners would appreciate that.
So, guys, Joe just did this recently on a recording, and I have his thing in my head. So if I mess up, I apologize. But if you have a question for the show, first off, you can go to our Discord, and we have the Q and podcast questions channel, which is for everybody, and you can ask questions in there. If you're a patron, you can go to the patron Q and podcast questions channel, because that way we can give back something to you for allowing us to continue actually having a show, which we really appreciate. If you prefer email, you can email us at podcast@blizzardwatch.com, as long as you put the subject line, you tell us what show you want it to be for. So that way Joe and I don't have to start playing the Star Trek music and rip our shirts before fighting with like whips and on wounds. Joe always wins. Yeah. I think it's because he does the music while we're fighting, and it's just like he's got the music going. But anyway.
The best part is every Star Trek nerd just had a flashback. You're welcome.
But regardless, we're going to go first up. I think I'm going to do Pasta Matt here because, well, his name reminds me of myself. Question for Blizzard Watch. Do you think they will ever make the first 4 collector editions pets available again, either through the trading post or the store? I wonder because I lived in a rather rural area at the time and none of the stores around me had them. Also was before digital versions of upgraded expansions were available. I do have most of the TCG and story mounts and pets, and do not care that they are available through other means now. So guys, what do you think?
I'm not going to say impossible, but they seem to hold the collector's edition stuff a little more dear than some of the other items. Probably because that was sort of like the appeal of selling them. But, and this is my counter to that, those finite production units are gone. So if, bringing them back and making them available for limited time or special events, maybe during an anniversary, or something like that, wouldn't be a terrible idea. I have most of the collector's editions. I think I stopped at Battle for Azeroth, just because I ran out of physical space, but I never got the first collector's edition, which has haunted me to this day, because I want the stuff that came in it, but I also need it on my shelf to complete my collection. One day I'll have it, but I think it would be a good idea. I just don't know that it will actually happen.
It's hard to say. Blizzard hasn't brought any of these collector's edition pets back, I don't think. I mean, like Joe says, never say never, but they also haven't shown signs of bringing back these super rare things.
Like the BlizzCon bear, right? That hasn't come back.
Like the BlizzCon bear, like the mini Tyrael pet that I have, and I feel very special that I have it, and obviously if other people had it, I would be less special. No, I'm kidding. Anyone can have it, and it would make us all feel great because mini Tyrael, he can dance, and if
he can leave your friends behind.
and if you go AFK, he will fall asleep next to you. So, mini Tyrael, great, exceptionally rare, and there's no way to get him anymore. So, more people being able to get cool things, pretty cool.
I think it's going to happen because Trading Post is an insatiable maw of stuff to get. And sooner or later,
that's also true.
They're going to be like, what do we have? Can we throw at them? We can throw at them. We can throw the panda at them. They'll love the panda. And they'll do it for the 25th anniversary Trading Post or something. But I don't think they're going to do it anytime soon. They've recently done a whole bunch of stuff that felt very much like a concession to changing times. I don't think they're going to make another one anytime soon. I think that this is not going to happen until they feel the need for it, and I don't. So let's looking through next questions to ask. Okay, this one confuses me, but I'm going to ask it anyway. This one's from Zerloon. What is the cranberry of magics? Shadow mixes with fire and frost. Arcane plus nature gets you astral damage. Is there a magical type that readily blends with all the rest? We are mixing talent trees a bit with these hero talents. We are mixing our factions with easier grouping. Will there be more magical mixing ahead? Thanks as always. Before I let either of them talk, I gotta say, cranberry goes with everything? Cranberry is one of the most revolting tastes. I hate cranberry. It goes with nothing as far as I'm concerned. Anyway, go ahead, guys. Joe?
I honestly, that is a really funny and good question. I don't know if everything is going to mix like cranberry sauce. But yeah, you raise a good point. We're getting all these different mixes. I would say I'm going to use this opportunity to shamelessly plug Lore Watch, where we, I submitted a, crackpot theory of what the Well of Eternity is actually made out of. So, you're welcome.
Cranberries?
Kinda.
Not as bad as cranberry.
Well, it depends. It depends. There's absolutely deep red purple in there, so we'll get there.
I mean, if we titled that episode "Made of Cranberries," that would have, that would have drawn me personally in, because I would have had to figure out what you're talking about. I'm just saying, if we put cranberries in the headline, that's your draw. Maybe we need more cranberries. Maybe that's the whole thing.
So strongly right now. But yeah, I don't have anything to say about the actual question. I just thought that number one, we could get done with it quickly because we were running out of time, and two, because I had to object again to the cranberry thing. Why are you putting anything? Vodka goes with cranberry, maybe if you're nuts, but anything else? No. Cranberry doesn't mix. Like people who eat cranberry sauce and it's this gelatinous mass and it tastes like cranberries. Like, do you not understand that it tastes like cranberry? This is how I know other people and I don't taste the same thing. Because I love the taste of blackberries. Almost nobody eats them. I hate cranberries. Cranberries are everywhere. Ocean spray, you have cursed the world. So anyway,
they also sing about zombies a lot.
The band. Yes. I thought you said Ocean Spray sung about you. I'm like, the most thing I know about Ocean Spray is that they consider the spiders that live in the cranberry bogs to be their employees, and you're not allowed to kill them. So if you have a 6-inch spider climbing up your face, you just have to let it. So yeah.
What?
Look that up if you don't believe me.
They're beneficial to the ecosystem of growing cranberries, so they're essentially protected.
Yeah, you don't hurt those cranberries. If you work for Ocean Spray and you're cleaning up those cranberries, you got spiders all over you.
So that is our War Within tie-in.
Yeah.
Cranberries, spiders, War Within, spiders.
The black blood of the earth is obviously cranberry flavored.
Done. This fits perfectly with my earlier theory. We're good.
But now, Joe, I'm going to turn to you and look at you saying cranberries.
All right. Well, friends, Blizzard Watch is made possible due to your generous contributions at patreon.com/BlizzardWatch. Your continued support means that this podcast site and community is able to thrive and grow. Blizzard Watch supporters enjoy exclusive benefits like early access to our podcast, better chance at having your question answered on our podcast of the queue, and an ads-free site experience. Also, we'll say your name on the show, so it's a good reason to support us, right?
Yeah. Especially as you get to see how we say it.
Mm-hmm.
All right. Joe, Liz, thank you guys so much for being here and for holding off that last question for me. Thank you to everybody listening. Thank you especially to Zerloon for asking me a question that broke me. Just broke me. I don't think I'll ever be the same. This has been the Blizzard Watch podcast, guys. Thank you so much for being here. And yeah, we'll be here next week.